Hey guys, this is JSer. How's everything going? In this video, let's talk about a little bit about React Native for web. So it's not React Native, it's not React, it's React Native for web. So what is React Native for web? If you go to the homepage of React Native for web, it basically is just a component, a bridge to enable the React Native component to be run on the web browser. It's for the UI component. It's not internal. The JSX component, so the definition could be supported by a web browser. So why is it needed? This is very interesting, I would say. Yeah. I used the Flutter before, for creating native apps, and later, I don't know when, maybe 1 or 2 years later, Flutter for web is coming. Though it is not super performant, it's very not performant, I would say. Those interactions is very laggy, but it shows us a very promising world that we could just really write code once and run for everywhere. If you take a look at the Flutter for web, it's totally different than how we write a web application. They just think like they just recreate the rendering layer from scratch, because it's not native DOM, right? Native HTML, they just those rendering process is not native anymore. It's, of course, it become laggy. Similar to Flutter for web, we have this React Native for web. If we go to the component list, you could see we have a bunch of component like activity indicator, and this exists in the React Native, and button and checkbox. Checkbox is very easy to understand, right? Where's the checkbox? Yeah, like this. And list, image background. I actually don't know why we have an image background. An image component with support for child content. Yeah. Okay, so this looks weird for us, right? If we just use React, or we just sets the image to the background of this div. List, flat list, a section list, and a virtualized list. Well, this is have some very nice abstraction and increasing the performance stuff, because the native has this well-defined virtual list, I would say. I remember in iOS, what is that UI table view? No, list view. Oh, I actually don't remember anymore. But anyway, we have this in React Native, and model picker. Okay, pressable. Pressburst is something interesting. It defines an area. Press interaction on any of its defined children. Pressable component. Touch mouse. I remember that in iOS there's some like gesture detector, something like that, right? Maybe it's much different now because we have for Swift UI. Anyways, progress bar, scroll view. Yeah, I remember that. Scroll view, switch, text, touchable view. So generating. Oh, this view is very fundamental. It's just basically the dev, I would say, in the HTML. So in short, we have this component already in React Native, and we this project React Native for web, like supporting, kind of like working as a component library, which is support this component, which tries to behave similar to native, but runs in web. So this is what a React Native for web. You might think it's interesting why we should use it, right? Actually, Twitter use it. If you go to the Twitter, and then you can open I think there is something components. You open it, you could see that there is a lot of things like view. Yeah, obviously view. View. Yeah, and any more. I think like this button. It should be a button, I would say. Okay, this text. Well, there's. Okay, this is just a view. It's not button. But anyway, if we go to the hover here, if we hover the menu, you could see that the hover style is not done in CSS. the hover pseudo classes, they are done in just classes by using state. I would say using trigger the event listener and set the state and update the style. So you can see it's a bit of unnatural, right? But this is the outcome of like bridging the React Native to web. I think for mobile apps, there's no such thing as hover because we are pointer based, right? But for mobile apps, they're just touch based. So this is kind of different. Anyway, why should we use it? There's some pros of this one. Is that if we are more natural, feel more comfortable writing mobile apps, it obviously it's more natural to use Flutter Web. No, Flutter. I like Flutter better than React Native, obviously. React Native for web. Because they use this same mindset. The component library is the ideas, how we organize the code, how we organize the component are all the same. So it's definitely more natural if we're going to develop like mobile web apps. I always said this that if you want to create a native app like web app, then we should organize our code. We should write our code similar to the structure of a native app, right? If you cannot write something similar, use the same idea, you cannot achieve something similar, right? Or you can, but much harder. The other thing is about share code. We've already covered this, that because all those components are the same, not internally, but from the outside, from the external layer, like yeah, it's the same. So definitely we could reuse a lot of code, right? Yeah. Internally, we just change the module, and we could just get it adapted to the web, and it's pretty cool. Easier accessibility. This is something I'm not very familiar with. I would like to cover in the future, because actually for the mobile apps, the accessibility is already built in. And for web, it's more chaos. I would say there's still ongoing, a lot of new technologies. But if you take the button here, you'll say, we could see that like accessibility label, and any more model. No, I think there's some other like view. Wait a minute. I think there is some better accessibility. Yeah, here. Yeah, there are some row props like this: accessibility, atomic, blah blah blah, complete, blah blah blah. Yeah, generally speaking, it has a better abstraction that allows us to create those accessibility support easier, and which means that the React Native for web has done a lot internally to help reduce our effort. Yeah, and no CSS hassle. I've talked about this for a lot. I don't like CSS. The C for CSS cascading is a chaos. We should not use, just a personal idea, we should not use cascading. So things like hover, pseudo elements, and like a sibling selector, like child selector, they're all bad. Really, really bad. It makes the code less maintainable. And React Native has, we've already get rid of this because styling, we define a style like this. Style sheet creates, and then we use the style, like the style. So it's no cascading anymore. There's no naming issue anymore. We could just, this is just a style, anything, it doesn't matter. And the root, it doesn't matter. It will be built into, I think they will be built into unique class name anyway, right? Util CSS. So I think it will be built atomic. So there will be no CSS hassle. It's completely solves all our pain points. So no CSS hassle, incrementally adoptable. This is meant by itself is that we could we could use this as a component library, but only use it partially. Anytime we find this component not enough for us, we could always just fall back to the div or back to our image for any HTML intrinsic component we want to use. We just we have an exit. It's pretty cool. So this is the pros of React Native, and what's the cons? What's the bad? What is not good about it? So personally, I think it is a problem of cognitive load. It's similar to the web, but it's not the same. I mean, so if we want to go to build a web app, we need to take care of those differences, like the styling. Styling is a bit different about those, I think, non-standard properties. Yeah, view stuff looks similar, but not the same. We need to switch. I always complained about this when I wrote something. I always say the Flutter is much better than because it's totally not the same comparing to the web. It's totally different, so I can easily switch my mind. But if I use React Native, I need to be careful about the styling unit because it's different from the native, from the web, and the property name is slightly different to make it work. Those just adds up to my cognitive load, and it is not suitable for web-based cross-platform. Why? Obviously, it's rooted in mobile native, right? It's from the React Native, so those mindset is different, a little bit different than a web application. And if we have some web technology innovations, there will obviously be some lag, right? Because React Native doesn't support it, so obviously we cannot use it in our project. Well, you can adopt these React Native for web as partially, so that softwares are that could solve the problem. But if we do that, I don't see any value that React Native added to our project, right? If we just use the partially, why don't we just write our own component, easy to use component, use this fantastic design system, and doing the same work, it will be less hassle, I would say. So yeah, if you want to do web-based cross-platform, those React Native for web is not adding any unique value, I would say. And another one is inherent need for platform-specific adaptation. This is something I've already addressed in the previous videos about Flutter versus React Native stuff. Is that React Native has taken a different approach than Flutter. Flutter has rewritten the whole rendering layer from scratch. So literally they have this same rendering process. So the apps will be rendered the same across different platforms, even from the web. But for React Native, it's different. They are specifically reusing the native component, not the rendering layer, but like for iOS, I think there will be something called the UI kit. Those native components, and they say that is for the best performance. But that's inevitably require us to do some platform specific adaptation, right? Specific for the React Native for web. This is also something like I would say multiple platform setup. Yeah, you can see we need to check the platform. If it is web, we do something like this. If we do Android, we do like this. If we do iOS, we do something else. So comparing to Flutter, it's much more it's much harder. We need to consider a different platform. So that's something I would address. So when should we use this? Personally, if your app is native based and if the web app is your second class citizen, then you could use it. Use some code and the web app is working. Well, why not? It's cool, right? So what's your idea? If we are building something cross-platform from the beginning, I would say I would not use React Native for web. Personally, I'm a web developer. I like web better. And the React Native, it's not the syntax. Those component is not perfect. It's not well defined by considering all those differences across platform. So if you use Flutter, everything is solved. But for React Native, I'm going to think more about the consequences. So how do you think? If you have different opinions, please comment on my video, and yeah, let's learn more. So after React Native for web, there's actually something similar, which is called React GUI. We will talk about that later, and that's it for this video. Hope it helps. See you next time.